Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon, and I'm with the Chabad House of Delmar. And today we're going to talk about an interesting subject, and that is people think that Judaism is very quote-unquote religious, kosher, synagogue, do this, don't do that. But really, it's a life. That's what we say. It's not a religion, which is a little funny. Judaism, not a religion, but it's a way of life. And of course, our head rabbi, who passed away in 1994, was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he advised people on everyday issues, not how to pray, not only how to pray, surely told them how to pray, how to keep kosher and the like, but life issues also. And a lot of times, many people go through their life and it doesn't have any meaning. Oh, so I go to work and I go 9 to 5, and that's all I do with my life, and I don't see any real meaning to it. And the Rebbe took exception to that and found real meaning in a lot of different people's lives. And there's this book, which I'd like to read a few accounts to you about the different people's seemingly very uninteresting, should we say, profession. Some are, but in any case, whatever profession, there's some idea that we can learn about how to serve our Creator better. So without further ado, let's take it with the alphabetical order. An accountant. Doesn't sound like too interesting of an idea, but let's see how the Rebbe looks at it. A businessman must periodically take inventory, balance his accounts, and determine his financial standing. Regular accounting procedures keep a business running smoothly and are a pillar of successful commerce. However, most of his time is spent engaged in commercial activity. He pauses only to evaluate a particular transaction to ascertain if it will be profitable and to determine the best approach. The examination of the overall status of his business is conducted far less frequently, usually only once a year. If it were to be done every day, there would be no time to conduct any actual transactions. We should follow the same procedure in our service to God, which is our business. Most of the time, our business year, we deal in the commodities of Torah and mitzvos. Only in the month of Elul, which precedes Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays, is the time for a general financial review, when we concentrate on introspection, stock-taking, and spiritual accounting. For the rest of the year, we should pause only briefly for specific short-range assessments. For example, upon reciting the Shema each evening before retiring, we sum up the credits and debits, the achievements and deficiencies of that day. Before Shabbos, we examine the accounts of the previous week. And before Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month, we balance the account for the preceding month. Then in the last month of the year, we make a comprehensive analysis. Some people believe that to proceed with Torah and mitzvahs, they must know exactly where they stand at every moment and constantly re-examine whether they are proper candidates for spiritual service, with the accompanying detailed introspection. In reality, this approach is merely a ploy by the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, to deflect a person from appropriate action by involving him in an obsessive self-analysis. He can instead proceed on his course with confidence, leaving aside this activity until its proper time. Well, to sum up, accounting is very important to understand. You can't just keep on going with business and business, but a person has to know that they're supposed to take an analysis of what they're doing, and of course that makes for more efficiency. If a store knows that this line is not selling, well, get rid of it. Hey, this is products people like, let's expand it. And that's exactly what we should do in our life also, that we see something interesting, we should, that we're doing well in it, let's go for it. Let's talk about the next thing as an architect. When we encounter difficult times in our lives, many are spurred to question the existence of a divine system and master plan for our world. When one part of the world structure appears out of sync with the way we understand it should be, we are quick to draw conclusions about the entire cosmos. However, the world of physics chemistry, astronomy, or the other natural sciences demonstrate otherwise. There, even the smallest atom is seen to have its own structure and function. Every particle of matter is subject to specific laws and is part of a defined framework, a cosmic order which is vast and complex. To highlight this lesson, imagine that you are in a massive building that has thousands of rooms. The furniture in each room is perfectly arranged. However, in one tiny room with strange furnishings, the sense of organization, so obvious in the rest of the structure, is not immediately apparent. Since the gigantic building and its thousands of chambers can be seen as part of an orderly system, undoubtedly the individual room and its unique furnishings are also part of the overall plan. Although the untrained observer may not at first understand the unusual pattern, with some thought he will come to realize that it must also be part of the larger system. Again, to summarize, people think, listen, you look around the world and the world is pretty orderly. I mean, you have springtime and the leaves come out, and then when the winter comes, when the snow would kill the plants, the leaves fall off, etc. Really look at our bodies and, look how in sync we are. And for the most part, everything in the natural world is very orderly. All right, once in a while things are crazy. You don't understand why. But because of that one thing that is not in sync, then you say, well, everything is not orderly. You just understand that one part you just don't understand. But it doesn't mean that all the rest of the 99% of the world is non-functioning or it doesn't have an orderly creator. Now, an attorney, many people are attorneys, the practice of law teaches us a very important lesson. The primary pursuit of an attorney is the search for evidence that will exonerate his client. Whatever the circumstances and however flimsy the case, the lawyer puts all his efforts into building a defense. In like fashion, each of us should attempt to find all that is good and worthy in our fellow Jew. If one digs for water and doesn't find any, this does not mean that water isn't there. One must dig deeper in order to find the source. The same principle applies to seeing good traits in another person. Although these may not be readily apparent, if one looks with honesty, he will certainly find positive attributes in his fellow. If in the end a person can only see negatives in others, this suggests that the deficiency actually lies within himself. This is closely related to one of the key precepts of Judaism, to judge others favorably and to always ascribe good motives to their behavior. You see attorneys, even though the person's so guilty that it's obvious, but the attorneys still work, look at this, look at that, and trying to find some good things about that person. And it's a good lesson for us to look that maybe even though we see someone's bad, maybe let's look a little harder to find something good about him. And a businessman, a lot of people are businessmen. There is a big difference between a business owner and his employees. The hired man puts in his required hours and leaves the concerns of the business behind him at the end of the day. Even the most conscientious employee does not demonstrate the same level of involvement as the business owner. By contrast, the businessman is always concerned with the demands of his enterprise. He may be eating or socializing, but not for a moment does he forget his business affairs. Although the business may be running smoothly, he always looks for ways to improve or expand his holdings. A Jew must approach his spiritual business, and especially the study of Torah, with the same dedication that the entrepreneur displays towards his business. Whatever our occupation during most of the day, Torah should be our real business, to the extent that we cannot detach ourselves from it. However short our actual study session may be, we should still be preoccupied with it hours after we have returned to our other mundane activities. According to the Talmud, when a person becomes preoccupied with Torah, it is as if he has redeemed the Shekhinah, God's presence, from exile. This will surely benefit him in all aspects of his life. So again, a businessman, a person has to be in the world like you own it, like it's part of you, so you're always working on it and not just, all right, 9 to 5 and I'm done. I mean, maybe that'd be good for a part of your life, but when it comes to really God's work, it should always be part of you. All right, keep on rolling here. Hey, engineer. Many people are engineers today. An engineer designs machines consisting of many parts, some more important than others. Although some parts seem to be the layman to have no function at all, the engineer understands how each one is necessary for the machine to function. Because he lacks the engineer's knowledge and expertise, a layman may mistakenly assume that the machine can still operate if a screw is taken away or added. This metaphor can be applied to the existence of the world and the fulfillment of the mitzvos, the 613 biblical and 7 rabbinical precepts through which a person can attach himself to God. If one violates the injunction, do not add or to subtract from the mitzvos, although the addition or deletion may seem insignificant to him, the mitzvah that he is lacking or is altered will diminish his attachments to God. In the same way that every part of a machine has a distinct yet integral function, God provided each individual with a specific task, his personal sphere of influence in perfecting the world. All the individual pieces are part of his master plan of creation. Many times you think, I'm not such a mechanical person. Oh, there's radio or a computer, who needs it? Well, what does that mean? Someone put it in, and it obviously has a function. Maybe you don't need it exactly then, but it's not like it's there. They just put in something on the computer program for nothing, just to make fun. Obviously, for somebody and some function really does need it, and it would be very helpful for them. So everything we see in the world also, maybe you don't need this thing right now. Who cares if a bird's in the tree or not? Doesn't bother you. But for some part of the creation, that bird is important. So therefore, that's what we have to understand, that everything in the world has a major accomplishment and is very important. All right, an entrepreneur, many people try to make businesses. The primary goal in any business transaction is the profit that the entrepreneur will derive from it. Nevertheless, there are differences in the nature of people involved in commerce. For some, profit is the only reason for running a business, and the work that entails it seems as a burden. By contrast, another businessman may find the enterprise itself intrinsically rewarding. Though he also anticipates profits, he enjoys the work for its own sake, even when he must expend considerable time and effort. For this person, the monetary rewards in no way compare to the enjoyment of the labor itself. On a spiritual level, the Torah is the life works of our soul. You may have several reasons for studying Torah. Besides gaining knowledge on how to lead his life in a Jewish way, he will reap an additional reward because Torah study itself is a mitzvah. However, nothing can compare to the deep joy and pleasure to be derived from the very involvement in the study of Torah if one is submerged in it, body and soul. So again, that a person, even the entrepreneur, sometimes you say people are millionaires. What are they working? Why don't you just retire and go on the beach? But it's not for the money many times. It's really because they love starting up businesses, running a business, and that is a great love to them also. So again, we don't have to think of every gain that we're going to get out of life. You should just do something and to enjoy it because it's part of life. Now here's this, even though if you're not an entrepreneur, not a commerce, but again, everybody you see and hey, look at that person, there's a lesson to be derived from. So even if you're not a multimillionaire, but if you see, hey, look at that person, look at that life. He's a multimillionaire and he has more businesses. Why don't you just retire? In any case, that would be a lesson to learn from a person like that, even though maybe you're not particularly like that person. But here's a life insurance salesman. The Talmud relates that a great teacher once called out, "Who is the man who desires life?" When a crowd was drawn to him, he added the next verse in Psalms from which he had been quoting. "Guard your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from speaking falsehood." There is one profession which takes the opposite approach, focusing on what will happen if a person does not live long. This is the life insurance salesman. It is a difficult profession which involves the unpleasant task of reminding people of their morbidity. Most people would rather plan for life than the opposite. A story is told of a man who wanted to write a will leaving an extremely large sum of money to an institution after his death. He asked the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rebbe Shabaron, lived 1900, how he should proceed, and the Rebbe answered that he would do better to plan on living a long life and deriving pleasure from seeing the charity have the benefit of his gift immediately. So people always give afterwards, and it's better to give their money right away. What motivates a person to become an insurance agent? The need to make a living, of course. Otherwise, the agent would not disturb the other person by reminding him of unpleasant eventualities. However, the agent believes that he has powers of persuasion which can be used to generate sales. Of course, it is the best interest of the life insurance company that the buyer of the policy lives for a very long time, since the company is only obliged to begin payment after the customer's death. If the customer is blessed with longevity, both the company and the purchaser of the policy will be happy. The focus on an opposite outcome is all talk, but hopefully will not actually come about. The salesman discusses death only as much as necessary to convince the purchaser to agree to the monthly payments. These same principles apply in the relationship between body and soul. There are two approaches. The Musar approach, Middle Ages Jewish philosophy, is to engage in fasting and penance to kill the animal soul of man with physical self-deprivation, fasting and focusing on his mortality. The second, more preferable approach is similar to the life insurance salesman. His recollection that he will not have live forever is only momentary and remains just in speech. It only serves the purpose of extracting the payments, the cooperation of the body, and the performance of the commandments. The second approach recognizes the preciousness of the Jewish body and the importance of maintaining its health for long and good years, just as a life insurance company wants to see its clients long life. So that's a beautiful idea. You think about death, but really the emphasis is on life. So that's a good idea. Maybe a tailor. Anybody want to learn about a tailor? The purpose of a sewing needle is to attach two objects to each other. In reference to the service of God, this corresponds to tying together the higher and lower realms, a process that is achieved through the soul's descent into the physical body in order to make a dwelling place for God in this world. Because the soul is the vehicle that forges this connection, it is referred to as a needle. Moreover, the soul's descent into the body represents a merging of higher and lower orders, since it is a manifestation of God himself, clothed in the most physical aspect of creation, the body. Specifically, in the use of a needle, there are two components. The first is the point, which pierces the garment being sewn, while the second is the thread that is drawn through the hole. The combination of these two elements defines the process of sewing. In our godly service, the point of the needle, that which penetrates the garment, alludes to a person's ability to nullify the gross materialism of the world and prepare it to be a receptacle for divinity. The thread, the actual medium of sewing, refers to Torah and the mitzvahs, commandments, through which the implementation of godliness is realized in this world. Now we're not only going to talk about professions, but we're going to talk about the professions of medical science and the actual medicine itself. So this should be interesting. The body's state of health depends on the constant flow of the life blood, which is pumped from the heart to all the limbs. When the circulation of the spirit of life is as it should be, a person is perfectly healthy, for his limbs are bound together and receive their proper vitality from the heart. However, if there is a blockage that restricts, reduces, restrains, or hinders the circulation of the blood and the spirit of life vested in it, then the bond linking the limbs to the heart is broken, and the person becomes ill or dies, God forbid. Metaphorically speaking, all the souls of the Jewish people are as limbs of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the dwelling for the divine life which gives life to all of its creation. The Shekhinah is also referred to as the heart. This teaches us that when souls are bound together and express concern for one another, the circulation and flow of the vivifying divine energy turns around and around. Our sages relate that the destruction of the Second Temple was due to the sin of causeless hatred and divisiveness. Accordingly, the healing of this illness will come about through unbounded love and acceptance of one fellow for another, thus paving the way for the building of the third and eternal temple. All right, let's talk a little bit, unfortunately, but it happens, disease. It is stated in the words of Maimonides, also known as the Rambam, and not only was he a great rabbi, remember that he was a tremendous physician in his own time also, around 900 years ago, that just as there are sicknesses and remedies for the body, so too there are sicknesses and remedies for the soul. By observing conditions that affect the body, we can make certain inferences about their effect on the soul. A state of illness generally implies either a deficiency or a weakness in some part of the body. There is, however, a certain disease in which the body is not lacking anything. On the contrary, something new is added, such as a growth. At first glance, it appears that this extra lump of flesh should not cause any harm. Nevertheless, this is a condition that can be even more problematic than when something is lacking. The extra protuberance is detrimental to the organ on which it grows and may even spread to harm other parts of the body. The treatment for this disease differs greatly from the remedies used to cure other illnesses. Whereas most treatments add something to the body, the remedy for this particular disease is to remove the superfluous growth, allowing the person to become healthy once again. In the past, this disease was not as prevalent as it is today. Therefore, a cure was not actively pursued. Unfortunately, in spite of the tremendous advances in many areas of medicine, this malady occurs with alarmingly frequency these days. As a result, many new treatments have been devised to combat it. In the spiritual realms, we are now living in an age when the footsteps of the Mashiach right before the Messiah can be heard, heralding an end to the darkness which is symptomatic of the period of exile. In anticipation of the obliteration of evil, there is a last-minute surge in some negative ways, particularly insolence and arrogance. These afflictions reflect their equivalents in the physical realm, where cancerous growths that take over the body can give the impression that the afflicted person exists only for the sake of the diseased tissue. Although these negative traits existed before, they were never as prevalent as they are today. God provides us with new therapies on the form of Hasidic philosophies, revealed only in the past 2 centuries. The studies of this philosophy teaches us how to remove the disease portion that manifests itself as arrogance. For this reason, the study of Hasidus is more important now than ever before. Although its dissemination was not necessary in earlier times, the increasing darkness in the world today requires a corresponding increase in light. However, the analogy is not perfect. In the physical realm, if one continues with a treatment for an extended time, it can have a detrimental effect on healthy parts of the body. In the spiritual realm, however, one can engage in the study of Hasidus for a lifetime without harm. In fact, such constant study will have a positive outcome, the continuing refinement of beneficial traits. So therefore, it's interesting. We see, different times they have different problems. You can go into the history, and now cancer is a bigger issue, And therefore, again, you learn from everything in the world, and that's the point of our little talk today, is that from every profession and everything, everything can be learned from. One more last thing we have time for today, what an injection is. Everybody gets a shot for something. Hopefully it's only for the flu, but sometimes there are other injections. Every principle that applies to the body's healing has a counterpart in the healing of the soul. The body and soul are each a component of the whole human being, who in turn is a universe in microcosm. To illustrate this concept, the previous Rebbe